Imagine being trapped in a pitch-black elevator, completely helpless, and your only hope for survival lies in the paws of your furry best friends. Sounds impossible. This is the story of Max, the dog, and Luna, the cat, who did the unthinkable. In today's video, we're diving into the incredible true story of a dog and a cat who worked together to rescue their owner from a terrifying situation. It was an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. Sarah, a 32-year-old single mother and freelance artist, had just returned home from a long day of running errands. She carried a canvas bag full of groceries in one hand, her sketch pad tucked under her arm. Her loyal dog, Max, a golden retriever with an ever-wagging tail, walked beside her, his leash loosely wrapped around her wrist. Perched on her shoulder, as if she were a pirate, was Luna, her feisty yet affectionate tabby cat. The three of them were inseparable, a little family that had learned to lean on each other through thick and thin. Sarah pressed the elevator button, her thoughts clouded with mundane worries, deadlines, dinner, and the ever-growing list of tasks she had to juggle as both mom and breadwinner. She lived on the 7th floor of an old apartment building, the kind where the walls carried the weight of countless stories, and the elevator always groaned in protest, as if reluctant to do its job. The doors opened with a shudder, and Sarah stepped inside, Max and Luna following without hesitation. She pressed the button for her floor, and leaned against the wall, exhaling deeply. Max sat obediently at her feet, his big brown eyes watching her intently, while Luna flicked her tail, her curiosity piqued by the flickering fluorescent lights overhead. The elevator began its slow ascent, the gears grinding audibly. Sarah didn't think much of it. This was how it always sounded. But then something changed. With a jarring jolt, the elevator came to an abrupt stop. Sarah was thrown off balance, her bag of groceries tumbling to the floor. Max let out a startled bark, his ears pinned back in alarm, while Luna leaped from Sarah's shoulder onto the handrail, her green eyes wide with fright. "Whoa, what just happened?" Sarah muttered, her heart pounding. She instinctively pressed the button for her floor again, but nothing happened. The small, dimly lit space was eerily quiet except for the sound of her own breathing and Max's low whine. Then, the lights flickered once more and went out completely, plunging the elevator into total darkness. "Okay, stay calm," Sarah whispered, more to herself than anyone else. She fumbled for her phone, her hands shaking. The screen lit up, casting a faint glow, but the signal bars were non-existent. "No service? Great, just great." She pressed the elevator's emergency button, her finger jabbing it repeatedly. But there was no reassuring beep, no voice on the other end, just silence. "Is this some kind of joke?" she said aloud, her voice cracking. She tried to steady her breathing, but the oppressive darkness and the confined space made it feel like the walls were closing in. Max sensed her distress, nuzzling his wet nose against her hand. "It's okay, buddy," Sarah said. Tone betrayed her rising panic. "We'll get out of here. Someone will notice, right?" But deep down, she wasn't so sure. It was the middle of the afternoon, and most of her neighbors were at work. The building was old, the maintenance staff often unavailable. And what if no one realized she was missing until hours later? Or worse, until nightfall? The air in the elevator felt heavy, stale. Sarah's chest tightened as she thought about how long they might be stuck there. What if the power didn't come back on? What if no one came to help? Max let out another soft whine, and Sarah crouched down to stroke his fur. "You're such a good boy," she murmured, her voice trembling. "We're going to be okay. We have to be." Luna, who had been silent up until now, let out a plaintive meow from her perch on the handrail. Sarah looked up at her, tears welling in her eyes. "And you, little Miss Adventurous, don't go wandering off. I need you too." Sarah tried to think rationally. She couldn't just sit there and wait. She had to do something. But what could she do? The elevator was a steel box, sealed tight. Even if she shouted for help, the chances of anyone hearing her were slim. Then she remembered something. A small gap between the elevator doors. She had noticed it before. A crack just wide enough to see into the hallway when the elevator wasn't perfectly aligned with the floor. Maybe, just maybe, it was wide enough for Luna. Sarah's hands trembled as she reached for the doors, her fingers prying at the crack with all the strength she could muster. It wasn't much, but after a few minutes of effort, she managed to create a small opening. Pale light from the hallway seeped through, a welcome contrast to the suffocating darkness. Luna, Sarah said softly, her voice tinged with desperation. I need your help. The cat's ears twitched at the sound of her name. She tilted her head, as if trying to understand. Look, sweetie, you're small enough to fit through this gap, Sarah continued, her voice breaking. I need you to go out there and, I don't know, find someone. Get help? Luna hesitated, her sharp eyes darting between Sarah and the narrow opening. Max barked, as if urging her on. You can do this, Sarah whispered. I know you can. Please, Luna. With a graceful leap, Luna landed near the gap. She sniffed the air, her tail swishing nervously. Sarah held her breath as the cat squeezed through the opening, disappearing into the hallway beyond. Max barked again, his tail wagging as if to cheer Luna on. Sarah felt a flicker of hope, but it was quickly overshadowed by fear. What if Luna got lost? What if she couldn't find anyone? Max, we have to trust her, Sarah said, stroking his head. She's our only chance. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. The elevator was silent except for the occasional creak of the building settling. Sarah's mind raced with worst-case scenarios. But then, in the distance, she heard something, a faint sound, growing louder. Max's ears perked up, and his tail thumped against the floor. The sound was unmistakable. Footsteps, accompanied by a series of frantic barks. Luna, Sarah called out, her voice filled with both hope and disbelief. A moment later, the familiar meow of her tabby echoed through the elevator shaft. Luna's ears twitched, her whole body alert as she caught faint sounds echoing down the hallway. Her sleek black frame moved like a shadow, silent but purposeful, her green eyes glowing with intensity in the dim light. She paused, nose twitching, then darted forward, her paws landing softly on the cold tile floor. Behind her, Max followed, his golden fur gleaming faintly as he trotted with a focused determination. His large paws made gentle clicks against the floor, and his warm brown eyes flicked between Luna and the path ahead. Max and Luna had always been a team, but this moment demanded something more, an unspoken understanding between them, driven by their love for Sarah. The building was eerily quiet, save for the hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. Yet, Luna seemed to navigate the maze-like corridors with purpose, guided by senses far keener than any human could comprehend. Max didn't question her. He trusted her instincts implicitly. As they turned a corner, the faint mechanical hum grew louder. Luna paused again, sniffing the air, her tail swishing with urgency. She bolted toward a heavy metal door, stopping only to leap up and claw at it with all her strength. Her sharp cries cut through the silence, filled with an unmistakable desperation. Max joined in, his deep bark reverberating down the empty halls. It wasn't his usual bark of playfulness or alertness. It was guttural, almost pleading. He pressed his body against the door, his massive frame quivering with the effort to make himself heard. The two animals, so different in size and nature, were united in a single mission: to save the person they loved most. Inside the maintenance room, Tim leaned back in his chair, one earbud playing an old rock tune as he flipped through a worn notebook. He was moments away from finishing his shift, looking forward to heading home. At first, the muffled sounds outside didn't register, but when Luna's sharp scratching joined Max's resonant bark, the noise cut through his music. He frowned, pulling out the earbud, and strained to listen. "Is that?" he muttered, standing up. He grabbed a flashlight and walked to the door, swinging it open with a mix of curiosity and caution. What met his eyes stopped him in his tracks. Max, the golden retriever, stood squarely in the doorway, his tail wagging but his movements frantic. Beside him, Luna clawed relentlessly at the frame, her sleek body trembling with effort. Their eyes met his, filled with a depth of emotion that was impossible to ignore, pleading, urging, demanding action. "What's going on?" Tim asked, crouching down. Max barked again, louder this time, then nudged Tim's leg before glancing down the hallway. Luna meowed sharply, darting a few steps away before turning back, her eyes fixed on Tim with a look that screamed urgency. Tim straightened, his chest tightening. "All right, I'm coming," he said, grabbing his keys and following the animals down the corridor. Luna led the way, her movements swift and precise, while Max stayed close, occasionally looking back to ensure Tim was following. The hallway seemed endless, each step weighed down by a growing sense of dread. Then, faintly, Tim heard it, a muffled cry for help. He froze, his heart pounding, and strained to listen. "Help! Is anyone there?" The voice was weak but unmistakable. Tim's stomach churned as he quickened his pace, following the animals to the source. They stopped in front of the elevator, and Tim immediately noticed the thin crack of light seeping through the doors. "Hang on," he called, rushing to the control panel. He could see a pale hand pressing against the crack, and a pair of wide, terrified eyes peeking through. "I'm here to help. Just stay calm." Inside, Sarah let out a shaky breath. She had been trapped for what felt like an eternity, the darkness pressing in on her like a weight. Hearing Tim's voice and seeing the flashlight beam was the first glimmer of hope she'd had. Tim worked quickly, his hands trembling as he accessed the manual override. The mechanisms groaned and screeched as he forced the doors open. Luna and Max stood by his side, their bodies tense with anticipation. Max whimpered softly, his nose pressed against the crack, while Luna's tail flicked anxiously. Finally, the doors gave way with a loud creak. Light flooded the elevator, revealing Sarah huddled in the corner, her face streaked with tears, her eyes locked on Max and Luna, and in that moment, the fear melted away, replaced by overwhelming relief. "Max! Luna!" she cried, her voice breaking as she reached out to them. Max surged forward, his tail wagging furiously as he pressed his massive body against her. Luna darted in, nuzzling against Sarah's leg, her purrs loud and steady. Sarah wrapped her arms around Max, burying her face in his golden fur, while her other hand stroked Luna's sleek coat. "You saved me," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "You really saved me." Tim stood back, watching the scene unfold. His throat tightened as he realized the depth of the bond between Sarah and her animals. "You've got some real heroes here," he said softly. Sarah looked up, her tear-filled eyes meeting his. "I know. They're everything to me." Max let out a happy bark, and Luna purred louder, her green eyes gleaming with pride. As Sarah stepped out of the elevator, a wave of cool air hit her face, contrasting with the stifling, stale air inside the confined space. Her knees felt weak, and for a moment, she steadied herself against the wall. Tim handed her a bottle of water, his expression a mix of relief and admiration. "You're lucky to have them," he said, his voice carrying warmth and genuine awe as he gestured toward Max and Luna. "I've seen a lot of pets, but I've never seen animals work together like that. They're incredible." Sarah nodded, her throat tight as emotion welled up. "I'm more than lucky," she replied, her voice steady despite the exhaustion etched into her features. She glanced down at Max and Luna, who remained glued to her side, their eyes watching her every move. "They're not just pets, they're my family." Max's tail wagged slowly, brushing against the dusty floor, while Luna pressed her small, warm body against Sarah's leg, her purring a soothing hum amidst the chaos. As they started walking back toward her apartment, the building seemed unusually quiet. Each step felt surreal, as though the gravity of the ordeal hadn't fully sunken yet. Sarah's heart was heavy with a mix of gratitude and guilt. She couldn't shake the thought of how close she had come to being completely alone in the darkness. But she hadn't been alone. Max and Luna had ensured that. When they reached her apartment door, Sarah hesitated for a moment before unlocking it. She stepped inside, the familiar scent of home wrapping around her like a comforting blanket. The soft glow of the table lamp illuminated the small but cozy living room, its warm light spilling onto the hardwood floors. Sarah turned to Max and Luna, who stood just inside the doorway, their eyes fixed on her with unwavering attention. She knelt down, her knees pressing into the soft rug, and opened her arms wide. "Come here, my heroes," she said, her voice breaking as tears began to stream down her face. Max was the first to respond, stepping forward and lowering his head into her embrace. His fur was soft and warm, and Sarah buried her face in it, inhaling the familiar scent that had always brought her comfort. Luna followed, nuzzling against Sarah's shoulder and letting out a gentle meow, her purring intensifying as Sarah's hand found its way to her back. "I'll never forget this," Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. "You saved me. You both saved me." Max let out a low, happy whine, and Luna licked Sarah's cheek, her small tongue rough but affectionate. The moment felt like time had stopped, as though the world had shrunk down to just the three of them. As Sarah pulled back, she placed a hand on each of them, looking into their eyes. "You're not just my family, you're my lifeline. I don't even know how to thank you." Max licked her hand, his tail wagging more energetically now, as if to say no thanks were needed. Luna tilted her head, her emerald eyes bright with intelligence and a hint of mischief, as though she were already planning her next adventure. Later that night, as Sarah settled onto the couch with Max curled up at her feet and Luna perched on the armrest, she replayed the events in her mind. Her fingers absent-mindedly stroked Max's fur while Luna's soft purring filled the room. She glanced at them, her heart swelling with love and gratitude. "You two remind me of what really matters," she said softly. "Not things, not work, just love and loyalty. I don't deserve you, but I promise I'll spend every day trying to." Max raised his head slightly at the sound of her voice, his eyes warm and full of understanding. Luna hopped down onto Sarah's lap, her small paws kneading gently before she curled up into a tight ball. Sarah leaned back, letting her eyes close for the first time since the ordeal began. She felt safe, wrapped in the unwavering presence of her furry companions. They had faced fear and uncertainty together, and their bond had only grown stronger. From that day forward, Sarah saw Max and Luna not just as her loyal companions, but as true partners in her life. Their actions had proven what she had always suspected. Love is not confined to words or gestures. It's in the silent, selfless acts, the unspoken promises to protect and care for one another, no matter the circumstances. Max and Luna, in their quiet, unassuming way, had become her greatest source of strength, and for them, knowing that she was safe and loved was all they would ever need. This story is a testament to the bond between humans and animals. Max and Luna's quick thinking and teamwork saved Sarah from what could have been a dire situation. It's incredible how their unique traits complemented each other, proving that even in the face of adversity, love and loyalty can overcome any challenge. If this story warmed your heart, hit the subscribe button and stay tuned for more incredible animal stories.